Hi folks, it is time for our weekly overview that would take us from today, February the 3rd, all the way to February the 7th, Sunday. We're coming off of today, on February the 3rd, Venus conjuncts the North Node. And so a set of energies that has been in play from let's say about January 13th or so, all the way to today is now, for now, phase one of that energy is now closed. From the time when Venus conjuncted Saturn on January the 18th, and that's why I started about a week earlier as we were heading to January the 18th, to February the 3rd, with Venus conjuncting Neptune on February the 1st and Venus conjuncting the North Node today, is now done. As you know, today on February the 3rd, and you would know this if you've been watching my videos, but if you don't know, that's fine too, Venus moves into the sign of Aries. And she's going to be in Aries for an awfully long time, just as she's in Pisces for a long time, because she's going to go retrograde in a month's time on March the 1st in Aries itself. So in the sign of Aries, sorry, I'm switching to where I can get my dates. Venus is in Aries from February the 3rd or 4th, depending on where you are. She goes retrograde on February the 2nd or 1st, depending on where you are. And Venus is in Aries all the way to March the 27th. So Venus is not coming back into Pisces until March the 27th. I think because Venus is going to conjunct Neptune and the North Node as soon as she gets into Pisces, Neptune certainly by the end of March, I would say we'll start to feel Venus coming back into Pisces, let's just say starting about March the 20th, 22nd. But between now and March the 20th, Venus is in Aries. And it's funny. I mean, I know why Venus goes retrograde and what's going on from an orbital perspective. You know, the planets are always moving direct. It's just from our standpoint on Earth, as we're going around the sun, sometimes a planet appears, even though it's moving forward, appears to be moving backwards based on the way our orbits are around the sun. So it's like two buses going side by side. The bus is still moving forward. Both buses are still moving forward, but all of a sudden this bus looks, from this bus's perspective, like it's moving backwards. They're both moving forward, they're turning, and it looks like even though this is moving forward, this is moving backwards. Not a great animation from my part, but I think you get the picture. We've always had those moments where we're sitting in a bus and two buses are going side by side and they're both moving forward, and we look, and the slower moving bus at that time looks like it is moving backwards. Slower moving, yeah. From the way that we in the West draw our charts, it's a way for Venus to stop getting so far ahead of the Sun and Mercury and to get pulled back into the loop. And Venus moving into Aries for March and early April, and Mercury comes into Aries on March the 3rd. Now, Mercury goes retrograde on March the 15th, but Mercury also comes into the picture on March the 3rd. There's going to be a feeling that in February and for the first week of March, as though we're moving into the Aries part of our chart. So wherever Aries sits in your chart, whatever house is occupied by Aries, as if getting into alignment in the Aries part of our chart, in relationship and financial opportunities, and creative opportunities, and opportunities in general, which is Venus's blessing on a day-to-day basis. What Venus gives us is the opportunity to align with what you value, and giving us various options. And there's typically an optimal choice and option, and then there are other options that we can tap into as well. And the March 29th new moon solar eclipse, while Venus and Mercury are both retrograde, is of course in the sign of Aries. And we've been having these Aries North Node eclipses since March, April of 2023. And the March 29th solar eclipse is the last of these Aries Libra eclipses. And it's the March 29th eclipse that is part of the energy when I talk about the end of the first week of June, the end of the first week of June, the end of the first week of June. It's so that we can capitalize on the last of these Aries eclipses all the way towards June the 8th. And depending on whether you have Venus and or Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, more people have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts than Venus retrograde in their birth charts. Venus retrograde is less frequent. You may feel that March 29th eclipse either the week before after March 29th and during the month of April, or you may feel it gather momentum more after the Taurus new moon at the end of April, heading towards May 29th, the week before, week after. But Venus entering into Aries, while our priority is to proactively in February, March, and April make the changes to the status quo that feel necessary and are moving us towards our alignment, and are frankly needed for us to capitalize on the last Aries North Node eclipse on March the 29th, where the energy remains till the end of the first week of June. And it's an energy that we've been trying to capitalize on and move towards all the way since March, April of 23, and may not have been able to. Some of us may have been able to, but there's more for us to get from this direction. And as I said, don't get too attached to a specific outcome. Lean in and grow into all the experiences associated with the North Node eclipses in Aries, and the growth that it is giving you and the direction that it is giving you will come as a result of availing of those experiences. And if some part of it is getting articulated as a wish or a hope or something you want for yourself, or what, then kind of see how that's going through this process. But it may be that if something very specific that you want isn't materializing, it may give you a feeling of putting you in touch with really what these eclipses are really about, and may point you towards designing a life or a solution that may incorporate what you want in a way that brings you closer to what is right for you as well. I can't explain it more specifically than that, because and we're going to talk more and more about the Aries eclipses. I mean, by the time, in about a month's time, we're going to be in eclipse season, starting March the 6th onwards, because the first of the eclipses is the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo on March the 13th. And that eclipse is certainly going to pull us back into the energy that we were dealing with the week before and after, January the 13th. So what is nice to know is that the future with Venus coming to Aries starts to beckon to us. In the Aries part of the chart, the North Node eclipse is going to happen on March the 29th. We are very conscious of ending what we feel we need to end and stabilizing what we need to stabilize, and put things in the right place so that during February and March and even through April, structuring plans in the Pisces part of the chart, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, acting more responsibly in the Pisces part of the chart, cleaning the Pisces part of the chart, setting boundaries in the Pisces part of the chart. I'm sorry, anyone who's coming to this video is the first of the videos that you're seeing. That is a theme that I've been talking about for a long time. And as I jokingly said recently, I don't think that people who've been watching my videos could even conceive of what things will look like after February 26, once Saturn and Neptune are out of Pisces, because it has been such a consistent theme that we, in my opinion, have been dealing with. But as we deal with stabilizing, closing out, making the changes, recognizing that the status quo is no longer acceptable, actively being part of those changes, putting in our past what we need to, reaching compromises, acting more responsibly, setting boundaries, structuring, all that kind of stuff, Venus enters Aries, and for the month of February especially, for the first 3 weeks or so of February, she's like, I'm slow, but I'm still moving forward. And the questions of what it means to bring our life into alignment with the future that we're trying to create, and how to bring the house occupied by Aries into alignment, linking our thinking, but more than that, linking our sense of what we value from a future state perspective, and providing us the potential for opportunities that we may apply for, reach out for, try to build relationships around. Comes into the picture in February, and it's a welcome thing, because part of what will accelerate and motivate us to stabilize and end what we feel we need to stabilize and end it is the fact that we can feel the future calling. On February the 14th, fear not, Mercury will enter Pisces. And all the work that Venus has been doing during the month of January, in the Pisces part of the chart, which she is leaving today, will get picked up on by Mercury on the 14th, and by the Sun on the 18th of February, and by the new moon at the end of February. And we will indeed, even though Mercury leaves Pisces for much of the month of March, from the 3rd to the 30th, he doesn't get very far into Aries. So some communication aspect in the Aries part of the chart will pick up in March, but then Mercury goes retrograde on the 15th, and on the 30th, on the 27th of March, Venus is back in Pisces. On the 30th of March, Mercury is back in Pisces. Till the 20th of March, the Sun is still in Pisces, and it's only on the 29th of March that we have the solar eclipse in Aries, all the way from Mercury entering Pisces on February the 14th to April the 30th. The sign of Pisces is just going to be its own cauldron. That's why I'm saying middle of April, end of April, middle of it. That's what we're driving towards. And then by the time we look at May, not only has the Sun moved ahead from the personal planets of Venus and Mercury, and the Sun by that time has entered Taurus, and a new moon in Taurus occurs on April the 27th. But by that time, Mercury is also in Aries, and Venus on April the 30th is also in Aries. And I think after the first week of May, Mars also completes his final opposition to Pluto. And this energy that we've been in, changing the status quo, and especially in February, March, and April, grappling with the Pisces part of the chart and closing out what we need to in order to lean into. Remember that till the end of the first week of June, our future goals, our aims, what is beckoning to us, what is motivating us, sits in the Aries part of the chart and the Taurus part of our chart, and depending on what your rising sign is, the Gemini part of the chart. The Aries part of the chart, because that's where the last of the new moon north node solar eclipses is. The Taurus part of the chart, because we've got Uranus in Taurus still, and Jupiter conjuncted Uranus on April the 20th, 2024. And at least from a Jupiter perspective, till the end of May, changes are still occurring to help move us in the direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of our chart. And Jupiter in Gemini till June the 8th, June the 9th is still creating his endings and new beginnings in the Gemini part of the chart. And Jupiter is a very current energy, given the fact that the new moon in Aquarius last week trined Jupiter. And Jupiter is in conversation with Saturn and will be with Neptune. I'll develop this more. Tomorrow, Jupiter goes direct. So as we talk about the weekly overview more and more in this video, we'll get to that. But right now, to ground us, we have to acknowledge Venus moving into Aries. We have to zoom out a little bit from this week and note that Mercury and the Sun and the new moon in Pisces and a busy March in Pisces and a busy April in Pisces, because Mercury and Venus, when they go at the end of March, you've got the month of Pisces occurring between the end of February and the end of March. But even though the month of Aries begins with that new moon solar eclipse on March the 29th, two of the personal planets are still back in the Pisces part of the chart to finish up energies that have been rolling since January 13th, 14th or so, when Venus came into Pisces, moved to conjunct with Saturn. Well, Venus came into Pisces at the beginning of January, moved to conjunct to Saturn on January the 18th, just conjuncted with Neptune on November the 1st, just conjuncted with the North Node on November the 3rd, today. And she will be back. But now, at least for the month of February, and even for much of March. And Venus's entry into the Aries part of the chart should be looked at as, during the month of February, kind of putting a stake in the ground and asking for what it's going to take to prepare us for that eclipse on March the 29th and the energies of May and the first week of June of 2025. But when Venus goes retrograde, she is going to move towards asking the question, well, if that's where you want to go, dear person, now I'm going to go retrograde so we can work together to figure out how we're going to align our resources, our money, our expenses, our income streams, how we are managing our resources, how we are living financially. And we're going to take a look at our relationships and see what we need to do to bring them into alignment with where we want to go. And the more proactively during February you start thinking along those lines, let me take a look at my expenses. Let me stabilize the Pisces part of it. What do I need to do as we pursue and move towards the Aries part of the chart? Where do I need my resources to be? What income do I need to generate? What are my expenses? Venus retrograde, as I've said a lot of times, is notoriously a financially austere time. Cash flow may be limited. And Venus is saying, okay, so you want to create a startup, or you want to create your own business, or you want to live on your own, or you want to go in this direction or that direction, but you're living in a house with a yard and paying that mortgage, and you have all these subscriptions that you barely use, and your dry cleaning bill is ridiculous. So how is your expenses and your resources in your life? And these people in your life are not really in alignment with where it is that you want to go. And how, let's align, let's bring things into alignment with regard to your expenses and what you value in your relationships. And if you really want to move forward in this direction that the Aries North Node eclipses have been asking you to consider moving forward in since March, April of 2023, and we are now in the place where we can actually handle and deal with closing out what we need to and creating the space for the new in February, March, and April, then let's start to do that in earnest. February is a month where you put the stake in the ground and you can have a lot of forward movement all the way to the end of the first week of March when Mercury is direct. So pay attention to opportunities, alignment, avail of opportunities, put yourself out there, start to manage resources, relationships, look at the Pisces part of the chart, start to structure, start to bring things into the right direction now so that March doesn't smack you around and force things. When Venus goes retrograde, Mercury goes retrograde. Change is afoot. Change is here. Change is needed. The status quo will not hold. Let's cooperate with it. But let's also understand that we're trying to get somewhere with a trajectory that takes, for some people, as I said, that if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you're going to feel that eclipse likely week before and after March 29th. But if you have got Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you may feel that eclipse taking hold more after the end of April, towards the end of the first week of June. And that's fine. But we need to move towards the change, but we've also got to do it in a way that we're not inviting in chaos prematurely. What do I mean by that? If you're changing income streams, if you know that something needs to end and you're creating something new to take its place, then figure out when you're going to make that transition over the next 2 or 3 months, if that applies to you. It's an example. Don't just run out there and quit your job. This is exactly my point. Don't just prematurely make things even more stressful for you going, well, I'm going to generate things with this new income stream here, and I'm working towards it. But if it's not here, then whatever you've got giving you a sense of stability and security to take you there is, it's such a juggling act creating that change. You need to have the time and the space and the energy to create the new, and you've got to use what you've got in order to get you there, and then you've got to end this, and it's a very specific scenario for each person. The more proactively you create the new, and in the example I gave, create that income stream, the sooner and more confidently you can say, all right, I'm going to retire this. Some of you may decide, I'm just going to take that leap of faith. Some of you may decide, you know what, I'm building this, but I'm going to hang on to this, and I'm going to figure out what's the best way to be able to do it, because it can be hard living a new life and an old life at the same time. So these kinds of shifting realities can be, it's a very personal set of decisions based on whatever it is that you're juggling. When should I move out of this apartment? And when should I move to that city? And when should I make this change? When should I make that change? What's the right place for this to fall into the, and you can be sensible about it and doesn't. So February, March, April. February, push forward. March, let's go back. And especially with that Mercury retrograde from the middle of, this is turning out to be bigger than a weekly overview, but you know what? It feels like it's necessary right now to convey this. It's a little bit more of a February overview, to be perfectly honest with you. Oh gosh, am I going to have to make this more of a February overview? I might. Or we'll just make it both a February and a weekly overview on a very high level perspective. Just kind of take that into, feel it that way. And when it comes to March, with that Mercury, when Mercury is retrograde, always remember March 15th to April the 7th, it is a reality check if you are moving forward assuming that certain things will fall into place. And Mercury retrograde goes not so fast. You don't know this, and this about this thing that you thought was what you were aligning your future towards. You've been putting all your eggs in this basket based on how things have been looking, and you've been building castles, and you're a totally natural and totally human thing to do. My classic Mercury retrograde archetypal example is, I've given my first round, I've given my second round, I've given my third round, everyone seems to love me, of course I'm going to get this job, and I've got to start thinking about how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to do that, and Mercury goes retrograde, and all of a sudden you learn something and go, oh, I'm not getting that job, but this has come through, or universe, what the hell, and the universe is like, for now, trust that you've gotten as much as you can out of this, but move your eggs out of this basket, and it's time to keep moving. And 5 months down the line, you might look back at this job that you were building your castles in the air around going, thank God that didn't work out. So you've got to allow for that in up to the end of the first week until about April the 10th. You're going to have to let the universe do its kind of slot machine, it's kind of Tetris, it's kind of putting everything in the right places for you. And then for the rest of April, it's like, all right, let's close this period from February to April. So, all of that, 24 minutes around Venus changing signs. But you know what? And part of the reason why I did this was because so much of last week's overview, and you remember the videos, and you can go back to see those videos, and all that was about Venus's conjunction with Saturn, and then Neptune and the North Node. And you all know how much I talked about Venus conjuncting Neptune and the North Node. There's 2 videos out there. And they're important videos because guess what? We will be revisiting that energy starting the third week of March when Venus is getting ready to come back in. But we will also be revisiting that energy starting next week when Mercury is getting closer and closer to the cusp of Pisces and moves into Pisces on February the 14th. Whatever Venus has been up to in January, we get in communication about processing, thinking, communication starting the middle of February. So the things we talked about yesterday remain important. There were a few notes I had, again, talking about Venus conjuncting the North Node and Neptune. And these are an addendum to the last two videos that I did on Venus conjuncting the North Node and Neptune on February 1st and 3rd, February 3rd being today. Remember that with Neptune, and particularly with Pisces, there's an energy around the ecstasy of connection, dissolving the ego and connecting to spirit. But having that sense of connection, a connection to our individuated selves, our egos, our personhoods, our personalities. And highly spiritual people will say, well, there's no such thing. But the bottom line is we live in our bodies. We have bank accounts. We are having to engage with our individuated self on some level. And unless you're going to chuck it all and become some sort of spiritual advisor that has renounced everything, you're going to have to deal with the Saturnian reality of the individuated self. But that individuated self, individuation creates stress. It creates fear. It creates an awareness of scarcity, competition, pain, attachment, and attachment creates unhappiness. Control, lack of control. And with Neptune and Pisces, the biggest thing that they do in our service is to keep us connected with that bigger thing, connecting with which and dissolving that individuation leads to this feeling of bliss and connection with spirit. And there are all sorts of words for it. There's nirvana, and there's moksha, and there's ecstasy and bliss, and there's all sorts of words for that feeling of a connection with whatever that higher power is. Or for some people, it may just be stepping away from individuation. The challenge with Neptune and Pisces is that we, of course, can seek that ecstasy of connection through hacks, substances that get us there, alcohol, physical connection with others. And the challenge, of course, with those is that it might give you that hit, but part of the reason why we keep going back to it and back to it and back to it is because it shortcuts into a certain space where we can lose that connection with our stresses and individual pressures. But if we're not careful, that substitute for a larger spiritual solution that we should be striving towards can become an addiction, can become a crutch. And with Saturn in the mix with Pisces, it could be that whatever it is that we're using to create that Saturn, maybe, this is going to apply to some people, not to others, structuring, healing, trying to bring a sense of responsibility to anything that has led to, in the most commonplace way, and this I think will apply to more people, where since 2012 we've kind of lost our ability to manage affairs, in the Pisces part of our chart. Saturn, since March 2023, is saying, all right, let's get back on the horse and start managing this. And part of Saturn in Pisces may also be, what sort of a structure do you have to your spiritual life so that you can really connect to the right energy without resorting to a substitute in a compulsive or an addictive manner. Part of what we're doing in February, March, and April is that we are untangling knots, especially from 2023 and 2024, but some of these may go back to 2012. With Venus conjuncting Neptune, there's absolutely, with Venus conjuncting Saturn on January the 18th, Neptune on February the 1st, the North Node today, February the 3rd, there's absolutely a risk that, especially if anyone has been dealing with deceptive energies, unclear energies, behind the scenes energies, gaslighty energies, something that is meant for you to lean into, meant for development, is under threat of being manipulated with, stolen, taken. This kind of vulnerability is really in place till January, February of 2026. After that, once Saturn and Neptune clear Pisces and you just have the North Node going into Pisces, it's easier to access what you're meant to get from the Pisces part of the chart with regard to your growth. But considering that whatever it is that has gone on all the way to today, from the end of the first week of January, and considering that we are going to be communicating on it and acting on it starting the middle of February, but especially with the Pisces new moon at the end of February, during the month of March, and considering that Mercury and Venus will be back into Pisces in April, make sure that you are not kidding yourself and not letting anyone kid you with matters related to the Pisces part of the chart. It is time to get totally real. And where boundaries need to be set, they need to be set. This could be setting boundaries with yourself with regard to acting responsibly. Remember, I started this by saying, make sure you are not kidding yourself. I've already covered Venus conjuncting Saturn, and Venus will conjunct Saturn 2 more times in April. That energy from the middle of April to the end of the first week of May, all the preparation that you're going to be doing is to make sure that you are safeguarding any crap that hits the fan at that time. And you may have been given a flavor of what some of that crap is and what's been brewing since the end of the first week of January through today. Don't kid yourself if you're the one who has to act responsibly, and don't let anybody kid you if they are starting to make a go at that wallet in your pocket. And that is a metaphorical thing. It could be a financial thing. It could be whatever it is. And for those of you where Venus conjuncting Saturn and then Neptune in the North Node has an ambitious quality, building something, structuring something, creative, therapeutic, Neptunian, spiritual, use this time to further your ambitions in the Pisces part of your chart. It's lovely energy of sorting out who should be in, who should be out, who's in alignment, who's not, what's in alignment, what's not, where are things working, where they're not, where do you need to be more disciplined, respectful, how can you get that same energy from others, etc., etc., etc. Venus conjuncting Neptune, which the first of which occurred, on February the 1st, but we have 2 more aspects to this, and Mercury is going to conjunct Neptune a couple of times, 3 times actually, and that's the one. And Mercury is going to conjunct the North Node 3 times. Actually, it's the North Node conjunction that Venus and Mercury make 3 times in Pisces consistently. Venus conjuncts Saturn in Pisces 3 times. But both Mercury and Venus, unless I'm mistaken, conjunct Neptune twice in Pisces and then once in Aries. When Venus conjuncts Saturn middle to end of April is when things tend to be solidified and codified. So a lot of the work that you're trying to do to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, set boundaries, not kid yourself, not let others kid you, act responsibly, has to do with making sure that by the time you get to the middle to the end of February and end of April, that you can be relatively at peace with the outcome. I say relatively because there may be an element of compromise that you kind of need to look at and look into in certain cases, depending on what applies to you. And also remember, you're trying to get to a certain place by the end of April, and then these energies pick back up in September, October, November, December, January, February, when Saturn and Neptune are back in Pisces. So worst case scenario, something happens by the end of April, beginning of May, that is not to your satisfaction. Don't compromise on your integrity. Because by the time you get to September, October, November, December, January, February, things may be back one more time for you to get them to where you need to get to be more at peace with things. You may choose to exit certain rooms. Again, what I'm saying is not going to apply to everybody. But I'm going to put it here. You may choose to exit certain rooms so that you can move forward with a clearer energy starting May, June, by the middle to the end of April, if things are not going to your satisfaction and you feel, but you may also by that time set certain boundaries or throw a stake in the ground. And February is a great month to go ahead and start taking care of all of this. Because it's likely that in March and April that things will come up to the surface that give you a sense of the interplay between you and whoever or whatever it is that you're trying to sort out. With Venus conjuncting Neptune, one very positive quality of that, of course, is things like exploring our fears, healing our trauma, finding a gentle way to be in conversation with various people to determine what is truthful and what is not truthful, what has gone into the realm of paranoia. People often act out of fear because they are worried about what someone else might do. And with Venusian energy, some of that intensity can start to become untangled if we harness it. And I understand that Venus is no longer in Pisces, and that's what has led me for about 38 minutes to be talking about this. But we still get to tap into the work that she has done and build on it, as opposed to reverse it. And Mercury is going to come in February the 14th and the Sun February the 18th and the new moon at the end of February to carry on that work. So why not build on the platform that Venus has tried to create for us in January, lowering the drawbridge, asking the question, what do we need to do to bring the Pisces part of the chart into alignment with what we value? And to work on it. Now, but that conjunction with Neptune and the closeness of Neptune to the North Node, and, luckily, in my humble opinion, luckily the North Node and Neptune will start to separate after February the 22nd as we head into March and April. But they're still kind of uncomfortably close. Where the connection with Neptune and the North Node is a blessing is if sacrificing something or letting go of something is actually in your best interest, or if you're pursuing something Neptunian. If you have Pisces in your 10th house of career, which would make you what, Aries, a Gemini rising, and you're trying to pursue something creative or artistic, and you have the North Node conjuncting Neptune, that could be a very powerful, or something spiritual, there could be a very powerful pull or opportunity towards something that's really inspiring to you. All right, weekly overview. And we are one of 7 things that we need to talk about in. Actually, 2. Venus conjunct North Node, we've already touched on. Venus moving into Aries. By far, you would not believe this, the most important aspects that are occurring this week are connected with Mars. Mars squares Chiron today, but Mars trines Saturn in Pisces on February the 9th. As this week progresses, Mars trining Saturn for the second time, then after Mars goes direct on February the 24th, he is going to trine Saturn one more time from Cancer to Pisces. Let me get you that date. Give me 1 second. Mars trines Saturn again on April the 4th. This week, and Mars's operating style right now is retrograde, re-looking at what we're in conflict about, re-looking at how we're approaching conflict, re-looking at how we're pursuing our goals. But Mars trining Saturn is a powerfully harmonious aspect with regard to us taking action to fulfill our ambitions or taking action to set boundaries and act responsibly. So everything that I have said about using February to stake your ground, to set boundaries, to stabilize things, to act responsibly, to move towards your ambitions in the Pisces part of the chart from the Cancer part of the chart is extremely important this week as Mars is moving towards trining Saturn. One of the great blessings of February, March, and April that we have are these trines from Mars to Saturn, to Neptune, to the North Node. It's what gives this time period a sense of optimism. The new moon in Aquarius on January the 29th, which covers the bulk of February, practically all of February for all intents and purposes. Trined Jupiter. The Mars trine Saturn is encoded into that new moon. When you get to the Pisces new moon at the end of February, and it's an energy that will be present in March, things become edgier. That new moon in Pisces squares Jupiter. As opposed to the Aquarius new moon, I'm just making sure in my mind that I can see the right picture in my mind of that chart. Yeah. As opposed to the new moon in Aquarius on January the 29th, that trined Jupiter. By the time we get into March, there's greater urgency related to stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, and that will help Jupiter create its endings and new beginnings. Right now, there's support. There could be opportunities in February that you take in the Aquarius part of the chart that help stabilize, that help Jupiter create his endings and new beginnings, ending a 12-13-year cycle, starting a 12-13-year cycle in the Gemini part of the chart. February has opportunity written all over it. And the Mars trines Saturn, squaring Chiron today, trining Saturn on the 9th, Mars Cancer, retrograde. It isn't overtly assertive energy. There is a question of taking action to question how you should move forward. But in that process, as I've said, Mars retrograde has the energy of we were moving forward based on this plan, but something has come up and we can't move forward that way, and it behooves us to look at a plan again. But in that process, you're asking questions, you are inquiring, you are checking, you are taking action, you are redrawing. The energy is more passive, less overt, more planning. But in that process, you stand to build bridges. You stand to reach agreements. You stand to, rather than be in a place of isolation and conflict with people, you stand to be in a place of, does it make sense to do it this way? Does it make sense that we're just realizing this? Was this really true? Is this really how it should? I was gonna, with Mars, the general, I was gonna plant this battalion here and plant this battalion here and this here. But now I need to scrap these battle plans because, and in Mars retrograde, Scrap the battle plan and figure out a new approach to figuring out, first figure out whether that conflict is real or not. And what that conflict is really about. And whether there needs to be a conflict at all. And what it is that can be done to get to whatever it is that we need to. And if we need to be in conflict again after February the 24th, it is with a new plan. If that conflict analogy works for you. Otherwise, take with Mars retrograde the better analogy I give of a construction project that was moving forward in a certain way while Mars was direct. And when Mars went retrograde, December the 4th, 5th, 6th, to while it's retrograde till February 24th, it was like, no, we can't move forward this way. We've realized this is not, we need to recheck the entire plan. And in the spirit of what I was saying about the new moon in Pisces squaring Jupiter, but the new moon in Aquarius recently trining Jupiter, Mercury trines Jupiter today. Now, I will tell you, I am waiting for the universe to make clear to me what it is in the Aquarius part of the chart that is coming through or could be coming through, or I need to avail of. Sorry if you can see the blinds, my window's open because the breeze is really nice and I never learn. And I keep the window open and it creates its own problems and the blinds are going and I was trying to protect it from coming to the camera, but now I've opened it a little bit so it shouldn't do it. So we're fine. What is an obvious astrology video without referring to the window? I can't say that I'm entirely clear about how the month of February with regard to the new moon in Aquarius trining Jupiter in Gemini applies to me yet, but I'm going to show up to everything as best I can. But Mercury today, so that means all of last week, not only the sun, not only the new moon, part of this is, it's funny, we're talking about all the other aspects now that are happening this week, and I will list them. The sun conjuncts Mercury also on February the 9th. And Mercury and the sun are getting closer and closer and closer together. So it's almost as if the energy is a little bit more, when Mercury and the sun come together, number one, just be prepared this week that some Mercury retrograde type energy, more in the way of the problems it creates, the logistical problems it creates, may come up as you get closer to the 9th of February. When Mercury is combust close to the sun, not visible, he loses power because he is, I was going to say eclipsed by, but it's a little bit like the dark of the moon. Every time there's a new moon, it's like the moon needs to talk to the sun and get clear on what the next month is going to be about and then move forward. Mercury needs to have a cup of tea, meet up with the sun for dinner, and the sun, our source energy, and Mercury, the planet of our mental ability to understand what is going on and how to process things and how to communicate them and how to transact on them, are getting ready to have that conference at the end of this week. And so things that Mercury rules on a day-to-day basis, commuting and technology and travel and tickets and bags and delays, you may feel like that aspect of Mercury retrograde happens at the closer you are to February the 9th. More importantly, the Sun conjunct Mercury is an important deadline for the current Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. So one of the things to think about is the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius started when a retrograde Mercury conjuncted the Sun on December the 5th. And Mercury then went direct on December the 15th. December the 15th to February the 9th, you may want to reflect on what has been happening from a communication perspective related to the house occupied by Sagittarius in your chart. After February the 9th, all the way to March the 15th, when Mercury goes retrograde, is the next phase of it where you will build on the communication, make adjustments, build on. It's like the tree that has been planted and nurtured. It's going to start to bear fruit, and you're gonna harvest it, you're going to prune it, you're going to grow it, you're going to develop it between February the 9th and March the 15th. And from March the 15th then to the next Mercury Kazemi on March the 24th, you're putting the finishing touches to that Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. So the Mercury Sun meetup on February the 9th has more to do with that. But what it is doing is, I would say in the Aquarius part of the chart, and how opportunities in the Aquarius part of the chart can occur to support Jupiter creating its endings and new beginnings. Part of the reason why this is so resonant is that when the planets were going over Sagittarius, they were opposing Jupiter in Gemini. It's part of the same set of conversations. It's as if activities related to the Sagittarius part of the chart, this is such a rich and dense reading, I'm quite enjoying this. Opportunities related to the Sagittarius part of the chart that have taken on, that you may have been in communication on February the 9th, are playing a role in, because the Sun and Mercury are going to conjunct in Aquarius, how opportunities related to that perhaps in the Aquarius part of the chart get picked up to help Jupiter create his endings and new beginnings in the Gemini part of the chart. What do I mean by that? If Sagittarius is in your 6th house of job, and that'll mean that you're Cancer rising. And you have been in communication, thinking about planting seeds, interviewing, whatever it is, from the middle of December. And all of this is why the personal planets going through a particular part of the chart can be so relevant. Venus going over Sagittarius from the middle of October to the end of November 7th or so, I think, kind of plays into the opportunities she created that then this gets built on. You know, the personal planets have their own, on an annual basis, their own dance in each house in our chart. Then this conjunction with the Sun and Mercury in, if you were Cancer rising, what would be your 8th house, and the new moon in your 8th house on January the 29th. Trining Jupiter in the 12th could bring up some sort of opportunity to connect with somebody who can turn out to be an effective business partner or an effective partnership that allows you to work behind the scenes in such a way that when Jupiter enters the 1st house, you can really take on that new identity. It's a very complex analysis that I've chosen, but I will stand by it. I will totally stand by it. But what you need to take from this is something that you've been communicating on from the Sagittarius part of the chart might play a role from a communication opportunity perspective in the Aquarius part of the chart during February, in terms of growing in such a way that it is actively in communication with Jupiter, creating its endings and new beginnings in the Gemini part of the chart. And that's what this Mercury-Sun conjunction is about. We're ending a particular phase of a certain growth, and now we're moving into a phase till March the 15th where we're going to build on that and capitalize on that. And there will be further developments. But Mercury and the Sun need to be in communication around, in the Aquarius part of the chart, also what's working, what's not working, what is the right approach, who are the right people, how are things operating in the Aquarius part of the chart, what new energies need to be created, what action needs to be taken. Because Mercury and the Sun are so close, it could be that some of those opportunities kind of build more gradually as time goes on, as Mercury and the Sun start to separate. After this conjunction, Mercury, who was behind the Sun, starts to move ahead of the Sun. And Mercury's moving fast now. Mercury conjuncts the Sun on the 8th and on the 14th. He's in Pisces. I would say this Mercury trine Jupiter today, the Sun conjuncting Mercury on the 9th, clearly about the new moon and the month of Aquarius in your birth chart, the relationship between the Sagittarius Mercury cycle and what needs to happen in the Aquarius part of the chart to help Jupiter create his ending and new beginning. This is forward-looking energy. By the time you get to the new moon in Pisces that's squaring Jupiter, it's going to be about how do you stabilize the Pisces part of the chart to allow for this new beginning to occur. Now, talking about Jupiter. Jupiter goes direct tomorrow. Give him a few days and he's going to start to gather momentum. If you have Jupiter direct in your birth chart, this is positive news for you. You can start to gradually feel in a week, 10 days time, like the day-to-day luck that has been absent from your life since Jupiter went retrograde in October, I think, is back. And Jupiter now is going to make a beeline through Gemini and leave Gemini on June the 8th or 9th. Trying to complete the ending, especially, that creates the new beginning in the Jupiter part, in the Gemini part of the chart that is more aligned for you. It's like taking an Etch-a-Sketch and clearing it energetically. It is like coming into a room, identifying the couch that needs to go out, removing it, and at least creating the space for that new beginning. In certain instances, even bringing the new couch in. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your birth chart, do not lose heart. You're entering that part of your annual Jupiter period where you are going to be actively trying things and maybe not completely succeeding, but learning important lessons so that when Jupiter goes retrograde again, close to the end of the year, for that 4-month period that is really manifestation time for you, you may try things one more time, but because of everything and all the lessons that you have learned and processed, things will fall into place. So remain in action. I know plenty of people who have Jupiter retrograde in their birth chart who are successful and fulfilled. It just so happens that their ability to manifest typically gets squeezed into about 4 months in a year. But the rest of the time, they're in action and they're learning and they are still pushing for whatever it is that they want to push for and actively getting a sense of what's not working, what's working, what's not. And in those 4 months, Jupiter retrograde in the birth chart people manifest as much, if you want to look at it that way, as Jupiter direct people in the 8 months when Jupiter is direct. So, aspects this week. Wow, we're actually getting this done in about an hour's time. I really, as I was doing this weekly overview, I was just like, Abhi, where is this going? Now, I will tell you, not so fast, that by the time we get to early next week, February the 10th, 11th, 12th, we're going to be in that Leo full moon energy. And the Leo full moon on the 12th is quite a lion's roar because that full moon squares Uranus and Taurus. There's a reaction from the Leo part of the chart, an emotional reaction, an intuitive reaction to something going on in the Aquarius part of the chart where there's an awareness of changes that need to be made or a right path for us to get on or something for us to beware of so that we can actually move in the direction that is right for us in the Taurus part of our chart. I will cover that when we do the full moon video as we get closer to the 12th. But basically, you've got the full moon in Leo and you've got the Sun and Mercury still close together in Aquarius. And that full moon is staring both the Sun and the Mercury down, going, pay attention to how you're really feeling about certain things. Beware of golden handcuff type of situations. So that you can really follow the right path for you in the Taurus part of the chart. Again, everything I say about how to manage change and not inviting chaos, all of that applies. But it's interesting. The Sun conjuncts Mercury on the 9th. On the 10th, Mercury squares Uranus. On the 11th, the Sun squares Uranus. On the 12th, we have the full moon squaring Uranus. So as this week progresses, you may become aware of, in the Aquarius part of the chart, what changes you need to make, what you need to build on, what you need to develop, what room you need to create. When you're dealing with new moon energy, as on January 29th, and the month created by the new moon in the Aquarius part of the chart, you're very much planting seeds that reach a kind of fullness 6 months down the line when the full moon in Aquarius will occur. When the sun is going to be in Leo, maybe even with Mercury close by, and there's going to be a full moon in Aquarius in August. Do I have that date? I may not have that date, but for all intents and purposes, we have that full moon in Aquarius on the 9th with a stationary Mercury in Leo. Funny. So we may be planting seeds. Now, I don't think you're going to have to wait that long, but we may be planting seeds in the Aquarius part of the chart and making new beginnings and taking action. And we may be processing things, and you may deal with a situation that you need to be in communication about. And what is important about it is that, you may need to determine, it's all about what action do I need to take on the Leo Aquarius axis that will allow me to move in the right direction for me on the Taurus part of the chart. And the only reason why I'm going into this now and risking more than an hour in this weekly overview is because as we head to that Sun-Mercury conjunction, as this week progresses, we may find ourselves either in communication with or thinking about or talking about or exploring the right kind of developments, partnerships, activities in the Aquarius part of the chart. And we may find that we need to get clear about what that right approach for us is that allows us to move forward in the right way. And if somebody is not allowing for that to happen or is making life difficult, then as you head towards, or you are not quite making the right choice for yourself, but as you head towards February the 12th, there may be some sort of an intuitive or an emotional pot coming to a boil to help you along with that process to make the right endings and new beginnings. More on that when we do the Leo full moon. So, transits for this week. Mars squares Chiron today, Mercury trines Jupiter today, Venus conjuncts the North Node today, and Venus moves into Aries. Tomorrow, Jupiter goes direct. And then on the 9th, Mars trines Saturn and the Sun conjuncts Mercury. And on the 10th, 11th, 12th, we have the squares with Uranus, Mercury and the Sun, and the full moon. And then on the 14th, Mercury enters Pisces. This week and next week until the 14th, but even beyond that, the Aquarius energy is going to be building as we expect it to. I'm just waiting to see what this... I actually, in talking about this, I've already started to figure out what this means for me. It's always fascinating to do these videos. I feel like I've given us enough to process in this video. I was seeing if there was anything else that was coming through, but I think I will do more videos. As of right now, I think I might choose to talk about the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius, but I've said a lot about it. This has been a very detailed weekly overview. There's a lot that I've covered that I typically would just give an overview on, and I would develop in more videos. I actually think I might do a reminder to all of us about that Sun conjunction Mercury, but I actually think I might, in a few days, just focus on that Leo full moon energy. The thing I would leave you with, the Venus energy, the Venus entering Aries, I've already covered. Mercury will come into Pisces on the 14th, and we'll pick up the Pisces questions again. It doesn't mean that we're stopped looking at things in the Pisces part of the chart. We've still got Saturn there, Neptune there, and a North Node there. I mean, how many heavy hitters do we want? It's not like there's not going to be action in the Pisces part of the chart over the next week or 10 days. But considering that we're in the month of Aquarius and we're coming off of the new moon and we're heading towards a full moon, our own energy may increase. Our productivity may start to increase. We may start to feel more motivated to do things and push things forward in the right way for us. And we may be really contemplating, based on the Aquarius part of your chart, which house is occupied by Aquarius. You may be actively taking action, considering, and I really think that that's the right place to spend our energy right now as we head to that full moon. Because, and just know that by the time you get closer to that full moon, that to-do list starts to topple over. The energy becomes more intense, more emotional. The most productive part of this month is going to be after February the 12th. The week after, from the 12th to the 19th, when the moon is still more than half full, but we're past the full moon. I mean, there's a lot going on this week. You've got Mars trining Saturn, and you've got the Sun conjuncting Mercury. I think we're going to be, I've said enough. I've said enough. If you're thinking about where would the action go this week, it would be a combination of Mars trining Saturn, stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, here we go, with that Mars retrograde, and the Sun conjuncting Mercury in Aquarius, just before Mercury and the Sun square Aquarius and we get to that full moon. We may be facing some sort, the stabilization of the Pisces part of the chart, the actions needed will be clear. In the Aquarius part of the chart, there may be a kind of a crossroads energy. What do we need to avail of? What is the right path for us in the Aquarius part of the chart, this month created by this new moon in Aquarius on January 29th, that will get us on the right path to help Jupiter end and begin his 13-year cycle in Gemini, and for us to move down the path that is right for us in the Taurus part of our chart. And we may be faced with options in the Aquarius part of the chart where we are looking at things that do that for us and things that won't do that for us or be an obstacle. And all of that is for us to contemplate and to deal with this week. And as we head to the 12th or 13th of February, we may end up successfully making certain choices that put us on the right path, but certain other parties may resist that, which leads to our Leo full moon moment. On February the 12th, where we either have an internal roar or, and always my advice is assertive and not aggressive if need be. It may be an external roar. Okay, enough said. I feel satisfied leaving things where they are. Isn't it nice to not have me talk about any specials, so it doesn't have to feel like some part of this video is a sales job? But I mean, it is to some extent. I mean, let's be honest. You know, anyway, whatever. We all know that I'm doing this professionally. If you are interested in getting a reading with me, but I'm not talking about any specials. I'm not running any specials right now. But if you're interested in getting a reading with me, there are a couple of options. One for about 30 to 40 minutes centered around one topic, and one, my regular reading, which takes 60 to 75 minutes and is much more holistic. So if you're interested in either of those, please email me using the email address in the description box below, and I can send you information on rates. It will be helpful to know which country you're writing from, so I can get you the right information quickly. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. When you subscribe, there's a bell icon. When you hover over the subscribe button, I think, or when you subscribe, it gives you the option to click the wiggly bell on top so you can be notified whenever I do new videos. If you like this content or think others will benefit from it, feel free to share, tell your friends about it. There's a thanks button underneath this video that you can use to contribute to the channel. And sort of donation information is also there in the description box below. And you can always contribute to the channel for free by leaving a comment or liking the video. It increases circulation on YouTube. Thank you. Welcome to new subscribers, and I will be in touch with you soon. A lengthy weekly overview but at least for me, a satisfying one. So I hope you find it useful as well. Okay, take care.